I got a comment on one of my videos not too long ago asking me for another video for absolute beginners, so here we are. We all start somewhere. Whether you're a seasoned and talented driver or just a weekend warrior, we all had our first time at an RC racetrack. However, there are still those out there who are intimidated by the prospect of going to a track in the first place. And in this video, I'm going to go over some things I'd personally say to those drivers to help alleviate some of those reservations. It's important to note that the main focus of this particular video will be 8th scale, although I will be mentioning 10th scale from time to time. Before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsors of this channel, A-Main Hobbies, Cow RC, RC Trophy Chasers, and Peach State Hobbies. Anything you guys purchase using the links in the description below will directly support me as well. Let us begin. Before we actually go to the track, we need to gather a little bit of information. For example, where exactly is this track you're planning to race at with any real frequency? The best place to find where most modern tracks located and operate is basically Facebook. Asking around in your local RC scene, like in local RC Facebook groups and other RC Facebook pages, is usually the best way to get information regarding when and where tracks tend to operate. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can go to just Google and type in local RC tracks, and look at some locations, but those links may not give you up-to-date information. The next thing to do would be to gather information about the track you want to race at for the first time. It wouldn't make sense to dump a lot of money into a brand new racing rig, only to find out that class or even scale isn't run at that track. Take for example Beachline RC in Cocoa, Florida. Typically they run 10th scale only, specifically off-road 2-wheel drive buggy and 4-wheel drive buggy in both stock and mod configurations. How exactly do you get this information though? Well, there are a couple ways. For one, there's the obvious one of going to the Facebook and looking at different tracks, different posts, and race flyers. Usually they'll post things like the race schedule and the classes that are going to be run at said race. The other one is a bit of an odd one, but bear with me. But going to liverc.com's track list and looking at the most populated classes. For example, if you go to Loganville's last club race on the 12th of April, you'll see that the largest entry list that you'd see would be Sportsman e-buggy. The last and probably most foolproof way to get this information is quite simply to go to the track during a race or practice day and see what people are running, both in terms of what class and scale people tend to run, but what brands people tend to run as well. Again, you'll want to get a rough idea of the schedule if so you show up during an actual race or practice day. On the subject of brands, there are many to choose from both in the 8th scale and 10th scale world. For now though, let's focus on 8th scale, as that seems to be the most popular here in the United States. Even though this is dependent on which track you go to for your general region, choosing a common brand will help you in a few ways. For one, if you struggle in pretty much any way with the car, chances are someone will be able to help you in some way. The collective experience of many will outweigh the experience of one pretty much every single time. Now, I can only really speak for the US, specifically one part of the US, but generally speaking there are a few safe picks out there that you can't really go wrong with. For one, there's Tekno. I don't really need to explain this one too much, but I will to pad out the runtime of this video. Tekno is probably the most successful RC racing brand in the US. Not just from race wins and such, even though recently they have done very well, but also in sales numbers among average racers. Now, I don't have the full official numbers for this beyond what's most popular at races and websites like A-Main Hobbies and P&B, and anecdotal evidence from going from race to race, but I'm willing to say that among normal, non-chassis sponsored drivers, Tekno is probably the most popular in the US by far. As such, if you're just getting into the racing hobby as a beginner and you want a very safe option, Tekno is probably your best bet in the United States. There are other brands out there that will do well for many different people. I personally experimented with many different brands before settling with Mayako, but to not mention a Tekno as a very solid entry-level choice for many looking to get onto the track for the first time would be very disingenuous. Other safe brands for those looking to run different cars other than Tekno, particularly pillowable cars, would be Mugen and S-Works. If you're looking to choose a different C-Hub car that isn't a Tekno, that would leave the aforementioned Mayako, Kyosho, and Sparco. Now, there aren't many brands I flat out wouldn't recommend for those looking to run. The only ones that come to mind would be WIRC and Infinity. This isn't because those cars are bad, but because those brands aren't heavily supported outside of isolated pockets. This leaves us with in no particular order: Tekno, Mugen, Kyosho, Mayako, Sparco, AE or Associated, S-Works, and X-Ray as good entry points depending on your local track and where you happen to live. Now that you know what class and brand to run, it's time to gather a few other things before you actually go to the track for a practice day or even a race day. If you run at an indoor facility or perhaps many different 10th scale tracks in the United States, you may need only bring your general RC running gear with you: your car, radio, charger, tools, and other basic things to keep you running throughout the day. If you go to an outdoor or most 8th scale tracks in the United States, you may need some extra equipment. Things like extension cords, tables, and tents are very important as those things are usually not provided at outdoor track locations. This also goes for chairs, fans during the summer, and portable heaters during the winter. Make sure they're not electric based as those can pop breakers. This also goes for you also need things to clean your car and tires unless you're running on carpet and AstroTurf, as you're going to need to keep your car clean as possible for multiple of reasons. Vain reasons like looking good are part of it, but also practical reasons like keeping your car running optimally, and if your local tracks put additives in the dirt to keep the grip high like in a lot of places in Florida, to keep your car from rusting. This is where one of my sponsors comes in, being CalRC. Now CalRC has a lot of things related solely to cleaning your car and keeping it running optimally. There are other options out there though that are perfectly serviceable for those looking to go to the track for the first time that you can pick up from Home Depot or Lowe's if you're a square, one of which being uncomplicated green fluid. Other things to keep your car clean like brushes, air compressors, and many other things I'm probably forgetting are all pretty important parts of keeping a good track day. I will go over this in another time. Tires. Now, this is where things can get very tricky for your first time at the track, but not for the reasons you may think. See, in RC racing, everyone has a deal or sponsorship to some kind of extent, even me. So getting to an honest and unbiased opinion on what tire to use for what particular track and even that particular track day can be a bit of a problem sometimes. There is a way to circumvent this, however, and all it takes is a little bit of observation and well-placed questions to the right people. Take this scenario for example. Watch a race with many of the faster racers and pick out a car that looks pretty good on the track, like it's not sliding around everywhere and looks pretty controlled. Do your best to seek out that driver and ask them, hey there, what tires were you running that last round? 98.6% of the time, they will tell you exactly what they were running along with the details about how it made their car feel. If they're part of that 1.4% of people who don't want to tell you and are standoffish for some reason, try to avoid pushing the issue and move on to another driver. Don't stop there though. Ask as many people as possible about tire selection and see if you can find any patterns emerging. If everyone is using a block style tire like a J-Concepts Reflex or an No-Go Storm, then going with the tire that looks similar to these will be the play. Same thing with bar style tires, dense spin style tires, and big boy lug tires. However, like everything I've said in this video, there is nuance to this as well. Unlike 10 scale indoor racing where slicks are pretty much the go-to tire, outdoor 8 scale racing is more or less an educated guessing game. I made a whole video about that, so if you want to check that out, go ahead, I'll wait. Point is, basic knowledge regarding how to pick the right tire for the right scenario comes with time and experience. You simply won't have going to the track for the first time. You will eventually make the wrong tire choice. It is inevitable, and that's okay. Soak up as much info as you can, be willing to learn, and be ready to pick yourself up after making the wrong choice. Next up, I'd like to go over the main format of races that usually take place at club races and even some larger races as well around the United States. It's important to note this can very much change depending on the event and the track, but generally speaking, this is usually how it goes down. If you go to a race where this format isn't followed, be sure to ask the race director what the format is. When the race day starts, all the heats will be posted on LiveRC's website, and sometimes on paper depending on how things they do at that particular track. All you need to do to find your race is to go to liverc.com, go to track list, type in the name of your event or track, go to current event, go to qualifier round 1, look for your class, and see which heat number you're in. For example, on LiveRC, I'm listed as my normal name. If I go to round 1 or qualifier 1 of Pro E-Buggy, which is what I'm signed up for, you will see that I'm in race number 4 of round 1 of qualifying. As I write this, I realize this can sound a little bit complicated, but I promise you it's a lot simpler than it sounds. Moving on to the qualifiers and how they work, again, it's fairly simple. You give it a lot amount of time to complete as many laps as possible in the shortest amount of time. Everyone starts at a different time, so this means that everyone is on their own clock. This means that instead of running each other, you're once again simply trying to do as many laps in the shortest amount of time. There's no need to try and overtake someone or block someone from passing on you unless the difference in speed is extremely high. Once again, the goal of qualifying is to complete clean laps. Racing other drivers will not allow you to do this, as once again, you're all on your own clock. Depending on how fast you are now sorted into groups based on your first qualifying run. Once the first qualifying run is over, a break will be had to allow you to change your batteries, refuel, and change anything on your car that you may want to, or need to change. Qualifier 2 runs the same way as Qualifier 1, as does Qualifier 3, 4, and even 5 if you're at some races. How the qualifiers are scored can vary depending on the race itself and the race director's discretion. If you're running with qualifier points, then every single qualifier run will matter in where you start on the starting grid during the main race. During Rocket Run qualifying, then only your best qualifying run will count towards where you start on the starting grid during the main. Sometimes if there are more than 2 rounds of qualifier, like 3 or 4, and you're running qualifier points strategies, then they may drop your worst round and only count your best ones. Again, this really depends on which race you're racing at and the race director's discretion. Once everything is counted and you're placed into your respective starting positions like the main, it's time for said main event. Once again, like qualifying, your main goal is to do as many laps as possible in the shortest amount of time. The difference here is that everyone starts at the same time, meaning you are racing each other. This is where all that racecraft from defensive driving to overtaking acumen will come into play. Unlike other racing games you may have seen, or even full-size motorsports, the winner isn't the first person to cross the line after doing a certain amount of laps. Once again, it's the person who did the most laps in the shortest amount of time. If one person completes 11 laps in 8 minutes and the other person does 10 but crosses the finish line first, the person who did the 11 lap run will still win. Once the tone goes off and the race is over, all you need to do is complete the lap you're on and you'll be done. There's no weird overlap like with qualifying. The last thing I want to go over here, is some general racing etiquette that will become common knowledge to you over time. For one, there's the marshalling situation. Every time after you run your car on the track, you must go and marshal for at least the amount of time you run your car on the track. If you practice for 5 minutes, go on marshal for 5 minutes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What exactly is marshalling? Marshalling basically entails going onto the track on foot and flipping your cars back on their wheels. There are usually designated spots where corner marshals are supposed to stay for different sections of the track. It's also a general rule that once you run your qualifier or main, you go out and marshal for the next qualifier or main. If you are race 2, then you will marshal for race 3. If you are the last race of the day, you will marshal for the first race of the day. This rule system ensures that the race days don't go on for longer than they have to. The only reason why you shouldn't have to marshal would be if you are physically unable to or pitting for someone in a nitro main. In both cases, find someone to marshal for you. When you are out there marshaling, there are a few things to take into account as well. We'll start with safety. For one, do not risk your well-being to flip a car back onto its wheels. Between a driver getting upset that you didn't marshal them quickly enough, and a marshal having to go to the hospital because they took a 4-pound hunk of metal traveling over 30 miles an hour straight to the teeth, I'd rather the former every day of the week. Secondly, marshal how you want to be marshaled. If you don't like it when a marshal slowly walks over and lazily flips out your car back onto its wheels with their feet, try to avoid doing so with another. Always hustle to get the car back onto its wheels during qualifiers and mains while also being safe. Next up, we have the case of exactly how to marshal a car. Generally, the safest way to marshal an 8-scale buggy, be it nitro or electric, would be to grab the car by the wing, nose, or both. This is the safest and usually the quickest way to get the car back onto its wheels. This next rule, which again ties into the safety thing, is to avoid distractions. Being on your phone while marshaling is a big no-no, especially because it's rude, but partially because you can end up missing a car coming right at you. Again, safety is the name of the game here. Do not risk your own personal health to save someone else's race. And that's all the things I can think of at this moment in time. I will be making another video a little bit more in detail about what to bring to a large race day like any race time event or any race time like events in the near future, so stay tuned for that. Also, if you made it this far, I'd like to thank you for watching and would implore you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to support me further, be sure to check out my Patreon or consider becoming a channel member. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my active patrons and channel members Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Dave Armstrong, Rob Bettingfield, Caden Merks, Ian Petrie, Dave Buddy Howell, Jeffrey Kunz, Shane T. Ruth, Gable Barber, Maxim RC Hobbies, Dakota Burnett, Jeffrey Kunz again, RC Trophy Chasers, Ralesk86, Claymore RC, Brian G, and especially Morrison Wan. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, Psycho Nitro Blast. If you're curious as to why I'm not creating a dedicated video to it, well,